Hi there, my name is Philip Eidson. I want to welcome you to the Art of Procurement podcast, the podcast that helps you, a forward-thinking procurement professional, position yourself and your team to proactively take advantage of the revolution that's taking place in procurement today. By interviewing industry trailblazers and sharing insights from our own experiences, my team and I pull back the curtain and shine a light on the strategies, tactics, and tools that procurement teams are using to elevate their impact.
Hi there, everybody. This is Kelly Barner, Head of Content and Brand Partnerships here at Art of Procurement. As we travel through the holiday season, our team is putting together some different podcast episodes for you to listen to. In addition to the hats that I wear here at Art of Procurement, I'm also the host of the Sourcing Hero podcast, a collaboration between Art of Procurement and Una. New episodes air every Wednesday at 6 a.m. Eastern, and they cover a wide range of topics. Everything from soft skills to sales, and category management to digital transformation. I've always been of the opinion that movies based on books and stage plays are the very best. And as it happens, I've interviewed some fabulous authors this year on the Sourcing Hero podcast. I've selected excerpts from their episodes that will give you a sense of their tone and expertise, and they are all very different. First up, we'll hear Simon Horton, a negotiations expert, talking about persuasion. Then Tim Hughes will talk to us about social selling, yes, for procurement. And finally, Jonathan O'Brien, one of the most prolific authors in procurement, we'll talk about the challenge of sustainability and how procurement can rise to meet that challenge. So get in your most comfortable book position. Feel free to pause this if you need your warm slippers or a cup of tea first. And then settle in to listen to the highlights I've selected. If you are interested in listening to the full conversation I had with any of these authors, just check out the show notes for links. First up, Simon Horton. The power of persuasion is at play all the time and in all settings. Sometimes it is as simple as swaying a group of friends to agree with your restaurant preference, but other times there is a lot more at stake. Hostage negotiators and diplomats regularly find themselves in situations where their skills are needed to save lives and preserve social stability. Most examples of persuasion fall somewhere between those two extremes, making it a critical skill for all business people to invest in. In episode 81 of the Sourcing Hero podcast, I welcomed Simon Horton, the founder of Negotiation Mastery, where he provides negotiation training and coaching for banks, law firms, global blue chip companies, and yes, even hostage negotiators. He has also written several books, including his latest title, Change Their Mind, 6 Steps to Persuade Anyone, Anytime. Although I usually think of persuasion as an active pursuit, I took this opportunity to ask Simon for his perspective on the role that listening plays in the process. Let's hear what he had to say. When we think about persuasion, I think of that as an action, and it might be we persuade by talking, we persuade by writing, we persuade by demonstrating. All of those are active things. But you also talk about the importance of listening, which while outwardly is a passive activity, it's actually an incredibly important part of the journey. What role do active listening skills play in the act of persuasion?
Listening is massive, absolutely massive. I mean, to give you an example of how massively important it is, the hostage negotiation model, which is a very successful model, again, working in extreme circumstances, the fundamental building block of that model is listening. Everything else is built on that. So, in my view, people have a deep need to feel listened to. And so, everybody has this need to feel listened to. And so if you can address that need, You're halfway there already, just simply by listening to them and demonstrably listening, visibly listening. Listening itself is not enough, but demonstrably listening. Then that need will be addressed, and now they're going to open up to you and listen to you in return. If you think about it, they're not going to listen to you unless you listen to them first. You can't expect them to listen to you. You want them to not just listen to you, but listen to you properly. You want them to really process what you're saying and really understand it and really take it on board. Well, they're only going to do that if you go first. If you fully listen to them and process it and really try and understand it and take it on board. You can't expect them to unless you go first. So, and it's tremendously important for other reasons as well. After all, in any persuasion situation, typically you know half the answer and they know half. So you've got to listen to them to find out what the whole of the solution is going to be. And even more than that, even there's whatever the outcome is, you're going to have to frame it differently depending on who you're talking to. You know, if I've got a particular message I want to get across, and I'm going to, and let's say I'm talking to the CFO, I'm going to require a different framing for them compared to the CEO, compared to the head of sales, compared to the head of purchasing, compared to the head of legal. You're going to have to frame that same message slightly differently to each of them. Well, how do you know how to frame it for that given individual? Well, you find out through listening, through the deep listening. In the deep listening, listening to not just the words, but behind the words, listening to the emphasis, listening to the pause, listening to the slight shift in tonality, these kinds of things, you'll find out how to frame your message to help that person make the decision you want them to make.
That idea of listening demonstrably is interesting to me. If you've ever taken a negotiations class or course, you've probably learned about the options of making strategic concessions. If you can demonstrate to the other party that you aren't just listening, but that you actually hear them, it is like a form of free concession that doesn't require you to give up much, but may get the other party to give you quite a bit in return. Next up, we have Tim Hughes on social selling for procurement professionals. In episode 92 of the Sourcing Hero podcast, Tim Hughes, CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite and the author of Social Selling, Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers, joined me for a thought-provoking conversation about engagement in the digital age. Social media has changed the way we do nearly everything. Stay in touch with friends, gather information, stay up on the news, and make decisions. But should it also alter the way we buy and sell? Tim says yes. And not only that, our time on social media should be driven by strategy and purpose. I have a feeling that people use LinkedIn profiles in a very similar way to figure out who they're going to be talking to, how should they talk to them, do they want to talk to them, to your point. And yet, when we talk about the soft skills, and I'll speak from my perspective within procurement, there's a lot of talk about soft skills. It tends to be about influencing or active listening or effective communications. Very rarely is anything having to do specifically with social media included in that, which means that if there are best practices, which I have to think that there must be, we're not being educated on those. And so what is it, and maybe you have direct advice about this that would apply to procurement specifically, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on what each of us can do to be better at using social media on our own behalf.
I agree. I think that there's you used a word there, which is about influence. And this is about how can we whether which side of the fence we sit on from a sales or a procurement perspective, how can we influence the people that we want to? And we know that people have short attention spans. We know that people aren't putting up with the interruptions. So what is it, or where can we go to get that influence? So there's three things that you can do. And it doesn't matter whether you're in sales, whether you're in procurement, whether you're in human resources. In fact, the more people in your organization that you can empower to do this, the better. And when I say empowering, I mean, you say we're not being given the skills. And I totally agree. We're being taught in organizations about diversity and inclusion and health and safety, and what we're given are guide rails in terms of this is what you can do. This is the box that you can work in, and these are the things that you can say and do. And what happens is that actually in organizations, people are not given any advice at all, which kind of surprises me, because a lot of people think that going on social media is a risk, just like diversity and keeping yourself out of employee in tribunals is important. That's what you need to be doing with social media. So the three things you can do, and this is the same for any person within an organization. The first thing is you need what we call, from a sales perspective, is a buyer-centric profile. Now, the way that works from a procurement perspective is what you're doing is that you would present yourself a profile that would be attractive to the salespeople that you want. What the mistake that people make is that they either have a CV, they don't have anything at all, or what they have is something very, very vanilla. What your LinkedIn profile is a shop window to the world. There's 850 million people on LinkedIn. In effect, what they're doing is that they're walking past your shop window every single day. And what you want is someone to go, that looks really interesting, rather than just walking by and looking at the next one. And you need to present yourself in a way where people are actually curious about what you do. So they come and look at your profile. From my perspective, we see a massive transformation in that. From a sales perspective, there's probably many people listening to this that will say, salespeople, I don't believe what you say. I don't trust you. I'm not interested in you. And all you're going to try and do is try and sell me something I don't want. What we have is an opportunity to actually position ourselves and transform ourselves, so we actually position ourselves for the people that we're trying to influence. So, we're going to qualify. There's certain people that we want to talk to. There's certain people we don't want to talk to. But I'll give you an example. One of our clients, Namos Consulting, they're a 100-person Oracle partner, and a procurement person was out there looking for advice and guidance. They had a particular business problem. They were looking for something. They found this particular individual, and they said, "You look like you can help me. Can you help me? This seems to be what you do. Can you help me?" There was then a conversation, a normal sales and procurement conversation that turned into a $2.6 million deal. And they've taken another $500,000 out of that quite recently. So this is where people are seriously going onto social media and searching. Now, there's a difference between search and discovery, but I don't really have time to go into that. And what they're doing is that because of the way that the person set their stall out, not only are there people finding and saying that's interesting, but they're finding the person, as in the real person, and actually saying this is a person I want to do business with, and walking towards them. That in itself is transformation. So that's the first thing that you need, is to have a buyer-centric profile that is attractive to the people that you're trying to influence. The second thing that you need is to have a network. So this is a digital network. Again, this is about connecting to the people you're trying to influence. It isn't just necessarily one person in an account. It could be many, many people. So, for example, BMW has 120,000 people in the company. Being connected to one person probably isn't going to help you. One of my salespeople is targeting a particular company. He covers oil and gas for me, and he's connected to 1,000 people in this particular company. He's connected to the whole of the C-suite in the US, the whole of the C-suite in the UK, and He's connected to people right across the business. This is where he's actually able to influence and provide influence into that account, and he's more likely to sell into it. Now, the next mistake that people make is when they connect, is they think it's all about me, it's all about myself.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually all about the other person. Now, if the other person is going to connect, they're going to want to connect for a reason, that you're going to provide them with, that you're going to actually educate them. Now, it would be very arrogant of me to send someone a message and saying, "Hey, connect with me. I create some great content," which is sometimes what I get. It's like, so who says that you create great content? I'm certainly not saying that. I don't even know who you are. So what you're trying to do at this point is when you connect, it's about them. It's about creating a conversation. This is, as we say, this is social media. This is not about pitching. This is not about pitching your product. It's about going out and creating a conversation, just like you would do at a networking event. You'd go up to somebody and say, "Hey, how you doing? Have you traveled far? What brings you here?" That sort of stuff. You're asking questions of people. And the third thing that you need is content. We know all of the research, McKinsey, HubSpot, Gartner, Salesforce. I can give you loads and loads of research that shows that people come to social media to be educated. They're looking for insight. They're looking to be entertained. They're looking to solve that business problem. And what they're looking for is not brochures. They're not looking for people that are pushing out brochures through multiple employees. What they're looking for is insight. They're looking for, tell me something I don't know. And the best way to do that is for the people in your organization to be empowered to create their own content, to share that out. When I say the people in your company, what you'll find is that this isn't just about sales, isn't just about procurement. It's also about HR. This is about how you as in a business can actually become digitally dominant. And this digital dominance isn't just about leads and meetings and pipeline and revenue, which it can be, but it can also be about being the employer of choice within your business. If your employees are writing about the amazing ESG policy that you have, or the amazing diversity policy, or the STEM policy that you have, that's going to attract people to your organization. So we have a client, for example, that doesn't use advertising for jobs anymore. They don't use recruitment consultants anymore. Why? Because they don't need to, because they're active on social and they're sharing the things that they're passionate about. And if they're sharing the things that they're passionate about, then that's going to attract the people with a similar passion to that organization. So the three things are buyer-centric profile, network, and content, and they all work together. And they work just well in sales as it does in all other departments in the business.
As Tim pointed out, although our organizations are probably not giving us the skills we need to be fully successful on social media, it is just as important as any other soft skills investment we make. And procurement no longer needs to hold information quite as close to the vest as we thought we did in the past. Last but not least, we come to author number 3. Jonathan O'Brien is the CEO and a founding member of Positive Purchasing. He has over 30 years' experience working with household name companies around the world to transform their procurement and negotiation capabilities. Over the last 20 years, there has been a groundswell of interest in sustainability initiatives. But turning that interest into action will require procurement to be at their very best. Now, if there is one thing missing from many of the efforts that have been made so far, it is taking a cohesive approach to operationalizing sustainability goals and targets. In episode 94 of the Sourcing Hero podcast, Jonathan joined me for a conversation focused on how to foster sustainability in the real world, including whether procurement can support the quote-unquote new rules of sustainability without falling back into an old command and control type role. Here's a clip from that conversation.
And you and I have been around in procurement long enough to have seen
different things sort of go around this cycle a couple of times. I would like to think, I'll be a little optimistic here, that procurement is doing a better job of being collaborative with suppliers and stakeholders. So you no longer hear the level of discussion around governance and compliance that you once did, at least not internally. We're still measuring those things, but it's more around customer experience and removing friction and increasing transparency. And I wonder, especially since you mentioned regulation, if we aren't sort of in the position we're about to start that over. When these rules roll out, I think companies in general, and then it plugs into a tendency that procurement has, we say, okay, new rules. We're going to establish these new rules. We're going to make sure people are compliant with the new rules, as opposed to learning from the cycles that we've gone through in the past. And I'm wondering if you think that, given its very human, very environmental orientation, if there's an opportunity within supply chain sustainability to not spend so long in the enforcement phase, but instead to very quickly get to the point where we're on a collaborative journey with different types of stakeholders moving towards agreed upon goals, but we're doing it together as opposed to with right and wrong and rules and punishments and compliance and all that. Have we evolved enough to learn from our past lessons to apply that here, do you think?
Wow, that's a great question. I love the phrase "new rules" because I think that kind of sums up everything that we need to be thinking about here. Have we evolved to do it? I'm not sure. I see pockets of that because I think we have to approach this with a completely new approach because even without thinking about sustainability, procurement cannot be strategic if it does not look and work and exist outside of its function. It has to work cross-functionally. Suppliers don't belong to procurement, they belong to the organization. What we buy belongs to the organization. Procurement are the enablers of success, but that only happens with collaboration. So all the work I've been doing with companies over the last 20 years to drive in category management, to drive in supplier relationship management, those things can be driven in really well and make a difference, or you cannot drive them in at all well and think you're doing it well, but not. Both of those scenarios exist. The companies that do it well are the ones where procurement works together with the wider organization. Now, we're kind of going against the tide a bit there because organizations are designed as top-down silos because that's how organizations have existed since the year dot. It's how we measure success. It's how financial reporting works. Everything that has grown up with organizations kind of works against collaboration. So you have to create those conditions where people can literally come together and work, but they're doing it. So I think that I've seen with the companies that have been successful, it's the ones that have done that have been successful. Sustainability takes this to another level because if you think about how do you become more sustainable, that isn't just a question of buying a bit better. It's not just a question of finding out what your suppliers are doing and whether they're getting emissions under control. Actually, you've got to look at what are the things that we're buying, where does it come from, what happens in all of those supply chains to get it here, and what happens after us. But you've also got to think about how is it designed? Has it been designed with materials that help us be sustainable? Has it been designed in a way so that when the end customer uses it, that they're not contributing to the problem because they're creating more emissions, or it's not recyclable, or it becomes obsolescent too quickly. So we get into this territory where we're actually helping the organization redesign what it does based on what the supply base can help us do. I mean, just think about the power of that, because suddenly procurement's saying, actually, let's redesign this thing. It's not sustainable. Let's change the materials. Let's change where we source this stuff from. Because if we're going to make the thing we make sustainable, we've got to change it. And that turns everything on its head. It means procurement's role is super critical here, but more than anything, it means somehow we've all got to collaborate and work together. So new rules, absolutely, kind of forget everything that you know about how procurement has worked in the past and figure out how can we work together to change what we do, bringing our supply chain expertise into this.
So there you have it, 3 clips from 3 recent author-based interviews on the Sourcing Hero podcast. Procurement and supply chain professionals are incredibly lucky to have so many authors sharing their point of view in written and recorded form. I also encourage you to check out some of the other 95 episodes of the Sourcing Hero podcast. Those are available on Una's website or wherever you listen to podcasts.
If this episode struck a chord with you, please do send it to somebody. We grow here at Art of Procurement through word of mouth, and that would be really appreciated. You can also support us by giving us a thumbs up, a star rating, or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Since 2015, we've built the world's largest free resource for procurement professionals looking to elevate their impact. Our resources span podcasts like this, videos, blog posts, papers, and events. To join us on the inside and to ensure you never miss an episode, a webinar, event, or a post, please do subscribe to our weekly newsletter, This Week in Procurement. You can do that at artofprocurement.com/subscribe. That's artofprocurement.com/subscribe. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.